All right, folks, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. This is the first time that I've actually presented a Zoom, so it's a learning experience for me. Be patient with me. Um, yeah, so a little bit about who is this guy? Um, a little bit there about who I am. Uh, the osprey is sort of my favorite bird. I am by no means an authority. I learned about them by doing what I did as a newspaper reporter, by doing research, going online, talking to people, going to Zoom presentations, doing a lot of reading, and then observing them as well. And I love the bird because they do everything out in the open. It's one of the few animals where you can watch them live their lives. And I love to use it to get people interested in them and thereby interested in the environment. What I think is great about them. A little bit about their identification. It's almost impossible for me to tell the difference between the male and the female, especially when they're at a distance. If you notice, they have that dark band across their eyes. That is thought to help them to reduce glare off of the water, much like when a football player puts the black under his eyes. They are amazing at catching fish. Not only does that reduce the glare, but they're also good at adjusting for the refraction in the water. A little bit about their specs. Pretty much everywhere except Antarctica. I think it's interesting that their eyes change color as they get older. Their calls are it is a very, very high pitched shrill. They're relatively big birds. Tell a little bit about when the young are born. I think it's also interesting that their nostrils close when they dive into the water. They can dive as deep as 2 feet deep. I got some videos showing that. One of the more spectacular things to see in nature. One of the reasons that I just adore this magnificent bird. They're pretty much everywhere that there is water and fish. They like it when their nesting site is pretty much unobstructed. That's why they like nesting poles. They like being out in the open. Pretty much anywhere that fish are abundant. I've even seen some of them sitting at bars at the sushi restaurant. So like I said, they love to be at top of treetops, treetops without leaves especially, but poles, antennas, chimneys, cliffs, billboards, pretty much everywhere. There is a Walmart down in Florida where my family lives, and all the lights in the Walmart parking lot, top of them are about 4 foot by 4 foot, which looks exactly like an osprey nesting pole, and they are full of ospreys down there. I'm always amazed when I go down there to be able to see them. Their nests are really big, made of sticks on the outside, very bulky. They add to them every year. Then they line it with bark, grasses, and moss. Also, they unfortunately can line it with some debris, fishing line, twine, and so on. There was a case of some ospreys on a camera down in Chesapeake Bay where the ospreys had lined the nest with fishing line, and one of the baby ospreys got tangled up in it. And the folks that were running the camera said, "We're not going to interfere with nature. We're just going to let nature take its course," and that baby would have died. There was such an uproar from the public and the viewers who had a very good argument that fishing line isn't nature. That fishing line was left by men or women who didn't really care about the environment. So they gave in and they climbed up the top of the pole and cut that fishing line off the baby osprey, which made me very happy. So it's interesting that they return to the same nest year after year. And then when the babies are born here, they migrate south. Then in about 3 or 4 years, they'll come back here to nest as well. This is amazing to see, this aerial dance for the unmated males. The female will come, sit in the nest, and the male will fly around and do these amazing aerobatics for her to prove that he can fly. Then he will go and he will get sticks for her and bring them back to the nest. If she doesn't like the stick, she'll throw it out. He'll keep bringing one back until she accepts it and adds it to the nest. Then he will catch a fish for her. If he brings the fish back and she accepts it, she's saying, okay, you can provide for the family, come on home. Set up a nest. It is amazing to watch that. And again, that's what I love about these creatures, that they do all that out in the open. And then they come back every year and they work year after year to rebuild and make that nest bigger and bigger. We started it, and I'm sorry, folks, I got to backtrack. I was the founder and executive director of Chemung River Friends, a nonprofit organization to promote, protect the river. And we started putting up osprey nesting poles about 10 years ago. There are 7 of them up now that we put up along the river, out in some marshes, and along a couple of ponds. And 2 of them were done by this gentleman here as an Eagle Scout project. And we got the city officials to come in with some heavy equipment to dig the hole and to put up the osprey nesting poles for us. We also had students at the local BOCES build the nesting platforms for it. So really is a neat community project to see that happen. These osprey here, this nesting pole was put up by a 7th grade science class, a friend of mine who was a teacher in 1999. The pole was put up on Clinton Island in the middle of the Chemung River in downtown Elmira. At the time, it was put up by NISEC. NISEC would do that because the ospreys were nesting on top of utility poles, shorting it out the electric wires and causing a lot of problems to the customers. So they started helping erect poles. They no longer do that anymore. That nesting site sat vacant for about 5 years until 1999. And the teacher in the class named those 2 ospreys Gadabout Gaddis. If any of you are as old as me remember, there was a program, a flying fisherman named Gadabout Gaddis, who would fly around the country and go fishing. That's the name they came up with. So ever since then, ospreys have been coming back to that same nest. I don't know if it's the same 2, Gadabout and Gaddis, or not. Like I said, I can't tell the difference. I don't know if that is their young that comes back, but that nesting site has been occupied every year since then. And it is right out in the open in downtown Elmira. It's great to watch them. There is a bar and restaurant on the shore right next to it, and we installed a camera so you can go online and watch them on the camera. Why are they here? One of the big reasons is the river is very clean, plentiful fish. It is a safe nesting site, especially being out on the island, has very little human harassment. They are good indicators that the water is clean and also that the environment is doing well. Because they are apex predators at the top of the food chain, that means all the links below it has to be healthy and doing well. Every year we're seeing more and more ospreys coming here and nesting here, as well as bald eagles, which is wonderful for everyone. What's so neat about them is they can turn one of those toes backwards, grab it like a thumb, and their talons and their legs are covered with these spines, which makes it easier for them to grasp hold of a slippery fish. Their beaks are curved and very powerful, so they can cut away the raw meat. Osprey the word is derived from a Greek word meaning bone or bone crusher. I've been told, although I've never experienced it, that they could easily crush your hand or your finger if they had a hold of you. They have, like most birds, lightweight hollow bones, very large wings to soar and dive, Also, when they dive into the water, have a hold of this fish, now they have to come out of the water. They have to lift their weight, the weight of that fish, and the weight of the water that's on them, which makes them very powerful and amazing uh, flyers. Also, they have very oily feathers. I've watched ospreys feed in my pickup truck, and one of them caught a fish and flew over the top of me and shook the water off very much like a dog, and it rained down all over my truck. I was very fortunate to see that and enjoy that. They always turn the fish head first, so it is more aerodynamic when they're flying. I often wonder, as you see here with this picture, what the hell is going through that fish's mind as he's up there in the sky, wondering where he is and what's going on. And the fact that they carry him head first is something that is unique among other ospreys. As you can see, the talons there, how big, how rounded, how sharp they are, how strong they are. All right, hopefully you can watch this video.
After hitting the water and grabbing the fish, the game still isn't over for the osprey and its quarry. He needs to get airborne again.
Look at the size of those wings.
His talons are equipped with adhesive scales and long curved claws for an unbreakable hold. But a big trout can match him weight for weight, and the instinct of the fish is to swim down. There are tales of weak and hungry ospreys being dragged to the bottom, unable to release the fish or lift off from the water successfully.
Taking a little rest.
But osprey wings are adapted to give maximum lift from the water. And this male is young and strong. This is a struggle he's destined to win.
Osprey's wingspan is about 6 feet in width. And they're very good at using that wingspan. So after they catch a fish, take it back to their nest, tear it up. Their talons get pretty dirty, and I think it's very interesting. This is how they clean their talons. They will skim across the top of the water and dip their talons in there and clean them off as they're flying across the top of the water. So they are very hygienic, as well as being amazing fishermen. Here's some of the modeled eggs, what they look like, the baby chicks. One of the interesting things about them is there's always one chick that is born several days after the other two. I don't know the evolutionary purpose of it. Often that chick will die because the other two are bigger and will feed more than that chick does, or they will push that chick out of the nest. So I'm assuming that's Dad bringing the fish back. Mom saying, Dad, thing's not even dead yet. I got to do everything. That's the high-pitched noise that they make. Mom will take care of the fish and then cut it up in pieces and feed the babies. I think she's saying, look, Dad, he's jumping all around. Can't you do anything right? Once those young are born, they do nothing but eat. And that's all Mom and Dad does is fish and feed them. Mom and Dad will lose a lot of weight because they don't get to eat much. They're using a lot of energy. And you can see in here, there's some fishing line in the background. Those babies grow so quickly and eat and have to be fed so much. It is almost continuous, except at night for Mom and Dad. Like I said, they fly south, usually to South America, to spend the winter down there. Then they'll come back, and the babies will return sometimes to the very nest that they were born at, but they'll come back to this river. So I don't know if that nesting pole on Clinton Island, I'm assuming some of those ospreys that are coming back are children of Gadabout and Gaddis who were there to begin with. And again, as I mentioned here, the female will beg the male to feed her to make sure that he can provide for the family. They keep adding to their nests. Some of the nests are 4, 5, 6 feet deep and 4 and 5 feet across. Yeah, I think the eggs are beautiful. And they get their adult feathers in about 4 weeks. And they're starting to be teenagers, fighting and wrestling with each other. Now my mom and dad are out fishing. I was trying to figure out, what are these things on the side of my shoulders? What are these for? They have to have some purpose. I think I'll just rest. Mom and dad protect them, keeps them warm. There's not a lot of predators. A bald eagle will try to kill the babies while they're in the nest, but they're never left unattended. Raccoons can climb up the nesting poles, but we always put the sheet metal on the poles so that they can't do that. So other than us, there's not much that can harm the ospreys. And we do a pretty good job of that ourselves. Christy, how am I doing?
Doing great.
Glad to hear. Still looking good from your end?
Yes, looks great.
But you can see those scales on the talons that we were discussing that helps them keep a hold of the fish. And it's interesting, most of the time they will sit in their nest facing into the wind, which makes sense. That's that high-pitched squeal that they have. Calling to the young to fly. Come on, I want you to fly. Big brother here, I think he's got it figured out. I think I know what these things on my shoulders are for. They Facing into the wind. Nah, I think I'll take a rest. Nope, changing my mind. He's learning to fly. His two sisters are going, look what he's doing. Where's he going? Can you imagine that? How wonderful that must be. First time that you get to fly. So beautiful and graceful. Now, what's fun is to watch them try to land. I've watched them run into the nest. I've watched them knock their brothers and sisters out of the nest. Landings are pretty difficult for them until they get it down. Here the sisters going, he's finally coming back. Going off. They did a nice landing. So, there is a researcher in England who put radio transmitters on ospreys to track them when they migrate. And it's pretty interesting what he discovered. They said they fly south in August or September, and they fly at night. His radio telemetry shows that the route that this osprey took between August and January traveled 4,800 miles in 170 days, 44 days flying, 126 of those days resting. One of them flew 2,000 miles without stopping, which I think is amazing. They spend about a month flying and 5 months vacationing. They return to the same wintering spot, although mom and dad do not winter together, which I think is the reason that they stay together for so long, for their lifetimes. They get to spend some time apart when they're down south. Sad fact that 80% of the juveniles die during their first migration, and they'll stay there for 2 or 3 years before they return. Hurricanes are probably the biggest source of danger for them. Antennas, utility lines, they can't see those at night. When you're born up here, the Chemung River, you don't know what gators are. Landing in the water on top of a gator isn't the smartest thing to do. And then fishing lines and also horned owls are another predator. So one of the nice things about them is that they do help maintain healthy aquatic ecosystems. Being apex predators, they control the fish populations. They do predominantly eat mostly fish. I have seen them catch snakes and a lizard, but 99% of the time they're eating fish. So they do ensure a balanced ecosystem. Again, I said their presence is a great indicator of the environmental health, but they are so much fun to watch. And that's what I like about them, is taking people down there, especially kids, letting them see these amazing creatures and letting them realize that they're there because that water is clean, and the importance of us keeping that water clean and taking care of it. My belief, and I've always believed this, if I can get you down to the river, especially if I can get you on the river in a kayak, it'll work its magic. And you'll have a lot more respect and understanding for it and for the environment. And that's one of the great things that River Friend does. As we get people out in the environment, we show them how it is so magnificent. And we also educate them about what they can and can't do to help the environment or to harm the environment. So that's good for everything and everybody. Fortunately, they're listed as a species of least concern by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. As I told you, we're seeing more and more of them here every year, which is wonderful. My internet connections. Can you see this video?
Yes.
Misty? Okay. So it's not unusual to see other birds try to steal the fish after the osprey's done all the work. That's what this gull is doing. Saving energy in nature is what it's all about. So if you let the osprey do all the work, catch the fish, and then you come and steal it, you haven't used as much energy. I've only seen this happen with the bald eagle. The bald eagle got the osprey to drop the fish. The bald eagle dived down and caught that fish in midair. And that osprey was cussing at him. There he goes. So what are some of the threats that they're facing? Development seems to be a threat to every living thing. Pesticides and herbicides, especially when you put them on your lawn and they find their way into the watershed. Twine and fishing line. There's an osprey that got tangled up in fishing line. Electric wires, vehicles, people and pets. And there's an osprey nest at the top of an electric pole. Well, I was explaining why NISEC doesn't like that. You can short out the electric service and kill the ospreys. Lots of places you can go online and see osprey cams, especially down in the Chesapeake Bay area. As I told you, we have one on the osprey nesting pole on Clinton Island that you can see on the River Friends website. Why we love them? I think the bigger one is it captures our imagination. It has for centuries. One of the few animals that lives its life out in the public that you can watch. They are graceful and powerful. I love the freedom that they represent. And it just is a great reminder of nature's beauty, its ingenuity, and its magnificence. I also think it's pretty cool that they named a helicopter the V-22 Osprey, because it can do a lot of things that an osprey can do. It can carry heavy cargo, fly long range at heavy speeds, take off, hover, and land like a helicopter, handle many missions. Has a lot of different uses. It can carry fish, but it can't dive in the water and catch them. It's interesting that there are some things that human-made machinery can never match with nature. Some more pictures of this beautiful bird. You look down there in the middle, just before they dive in the water, they point those talons straight out and they have their head right in between them, aiming for that fish. And as I said, they compensate for the distortion in the water. They usually will catch a fish about 1 out of 4 times. They aren't doing it every single time. Well, how can we help them? Well, do what we're doing right now is learning about them. Protect and conserve water. Makes a lot of sense about short showers, fix leaks, plant plants. Don't pollute or use chemicals on lawns. Wash your car in the driveway. And the big one, bring your kids and your grandkids to see the ospreys. Take them out into nature. Take them to a river. Get them interested in it. Make them realize the importance of it, because they're going to be doing what I'm doing and what we're all doing in the future. The other thing is we can install osprey nesting poles. It's a great project. It's fun to do. And it's just such a wonderful reward when they start nesting there. A little bit more about River Friends. I was a co-founder, 2009. We protect the watershed in 5 rivers in our area. There's some contact information if you need it. Check things out. Just wanted to show you one more video. Underwater view. Christy, tell me if you're seeing this. Completely underwater. Okay, folks, I guess that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. It was great.
Sorry for all of the mistakes and interruptions.
That's okay. I especially love the first video when he's trying, or maybe it was the second, where it was trying to get back up off the water with the fish. And you could just see how much effort was being put into that, moving those big long wings. We have a lot of questions and comments. Colette asked, do osprey migrate in pairs? But then you later answered that, and the answer was no, right? They go to different places and spend the winter apart.
You're breaking up.
Okay, so we have another question. Colette asked, do they feed in both fresh and salt water? And then Chris answered that.
Say again.
Do they feed in both fresh and salt water?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, Chris answered that too. Said Chris sees them all along Brooklyn shores, and Marine Park is a good place to watch them. Are the females noticeably larger than the males?
They're a little bit larger, but they have to be right next to each other for me to see the difference.
Okay. Do they eat only fish? And you kind of touched on.
Yeah, pretty much 99%. Like I said, in all the years I've been watching them, I saw one time where they caught a snake and another time where they had some kind of lizard. And maybe they were just showing off.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Pete asks, how do they account for refraction in the water?
I don't know. They're ospreys. I've asked them about that, but they refuse to tell me. It's a secret that they keep.
Okay. And he also asks, are they returning north earlier than usual or than they used to, maybe?
Great question, but no.
Okay.
But I am wondering how climate change is going to affect that, because I'm seeing them, they're leaving later than they normally do. They're usually gone by the end of August or earlier, but this year they were here till the second week of September.
Huh, interesting. Okay, Steve Kinney asks, do ospreys eat any invasive fish, such as the Asian carp?
I've never seen them catch a carp. I don't think they're picky. I think any fish they can catch that they will eat.
Okay.
I mean, carp's pretty big, and they usually stay at the bottom of the river, so that's going pretty deep. But I'm sure carp has been captured by an osprey. I'd like to see that. I keep seeing Peter. How are you, Peter?
Good, Jim. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. What is their typical life expectancy, and does it differ depending on where they live?
Yeah, here's the thing about ospreys. They're very difficult to study because they do not live in captivity. They die of stress very, very easily. So what I've been told is in the wild, they can live for 15, 16, maybe 20 years. In captivity, it's only a matter of weeks before they live or before they die.
Are they, Nancy asks, are they affected by bird flu?
I don't know. I've had most of the ospreys here. I've made sure they all got their flu shots so that doesn't happen.
Okay, do they always dive hands first? And I think you answered that. Do they always dive
Yes,
their
yes.
talons first?
And talons first, yes. They'll it's great to watch them fly around. They'll fly around about anywhere from 30 to 100 feet above water. And then when they start circling or hovering, they've seen something. And then they'll hover, and then boom, they drop their wings in sort of an M formation, and then they start diving down. And when they're about 4 or 5 feet above the water, those talons comes out, and boom, they splash into the water. Back to the question about bird flu. they're pretty solitary. They don't hang out in flocks other than mom and dad and the kids being together. I don't think they have a lot of contact with other birds. So I'm guessing that reduces the chance of them contracting bird flu.
Okay. Caroline comments that there is an active nest at Tift Nature Preserve in Buffalo. And Alice mentions there's also a nest in Beaver Island State Park and Grand Island. And there's a lot of thank yous. Catherine mentions a nest on the north side of 104 east of Rochester.
It's on the highway?
Lake Ontario in view. On south is the Durand Eastman Park. The nest survived the recent winds, but the surrounding
I've never
gone. Catherine, can you answer that question for Jim? Is that right on the highway?
But I've never seen them nesting on the highway. They usually want to be within where they can see water, although from what I've read, some of them have nested as far as 12 miles away from water. All of the nesting sites around here are within, probably 50 yards of water.
Yeah, well, she did say that Lake Ontario is in view from where they are. Adrian has a question she wants to ask live. So yes, go ahead, Adrian. You may ask it live.
Yes, we have been trying to get osprey nesting sites put up. Isn't there certain things you have to consider, like height of pole and where, how deep into water would you put it? Or do you put it on the edge of a lake?
As to where you locate the pole?
Correct. And
Yeah.
how high?
So one of the things we've tried to do is put it as close to water as we can, and at the same time, far away from where people are going to be congregating. We've put one up at one of our boat launches that's probably 30 feet from the river. Nothing is nesting on it because that boat launch is so popular. I just think there's too much activity there for them.
Can you put the pole in the water or no? You want it on the edge?
No, we've never, first of all, we'd have to deal with DEC to do that. We've never done that. That would be difficult. And the other thing I would worry about is ice coming and taking the pole out in winter. So no, we've never done that. It's always on land next to water or on an island.
How high up, Jim? How tall should the pole be? How tall should the pole be?
Stop.
Jim, can you hear us?
Questions are breaking up.
Okay, so
I can hear
Adrian
you.
asked, how tall should the pole be? Should the height be?
The poles are usually about 20 feet, and the nesting platform is usually 4x4 or 6x6. And we always put 1 or 2 protrusions where they can roost or sit on. And then we always put 4 or 5 sticks in there, I guess, to get them going. They like that. I guess that helps them realize, hey, that's a nesting site they put for us. They've already started putting sticks in for us, but that seems they're more attracted to the nesting poles when we have sticks put in there for them. They know we're going to be good landlords.
Okay. David asks, how many fish per nestling is needed to fledge? So how many
fish do they have to eat?
How many fish? Yes.
Boy, I don't know, Dave. That's a good question. I think I've never seen them not want to eat. I mean, you can watch them. I've watched them for 4 or 5 hours where they're probably getting over that 4 or 5 hours, 10 to 12 different fish being brought to them and cut up and fed to them. So I don't know how much they're getting all the time or until they fledge. That's a great question. I just don't have that info. I can make it up for you if you'd like.
The number probably depends on the size of the fish too.
True.
So Peggy mentions there's a great podcast called The Science of Birds by Ivan Phillipson, and one of the episodes is on vision in birds, and he explains how birds can see clearly underwater. So you might want to check that out. Nancy
Well,
mentions
folks,
there's a
one
high...
other thing I wanted to mention too. I wanted to mention when they migrate and fly south, they fly at night. They use the stars and the moon, but they have iron crystals in their beak, which is sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field. They also use that to help them navigate to get south. I think it's pretty cool that you have your own compass right in your nose.
Yeah. Okay, Pete would like to ask a question live, so go ahead and unmute, Pete.
Jim, can you hear me okay? So this past spring in
Yep.
Montezuma, we usually have the ospreys come back in April, and they were coming back in March this past year. But another thing, and I don't know if this is
Really?
even true, I was on an airplane once and sit next to a physicist, and I asked him about the refraction, and he said he had an answer. Now, I confess I have no idea if this is true or not, but he said the more they can dive at a 90-degree angle, the less refraction is a problem. I don't know if that's true or not. But one last thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Makes sense, does it? One last thing I ran into by accident. I think it was Nova or Nature. It was an hour-long video on ospreys that was filmed on the Long Island Sound. And I wouldn't have believed this if I hadn't seen it, but obviously they had footage like yours. In an osprey, a male was bringing fish back to the nest. A cormorant starts harassing it, just like that gull did. The osprey goes back to the nest, drops the fish on the nest, goes back, ran the cormorant down in midair and threw it into the Long Island Sound, then went back to the cormorant colony and literally started strafing the colony. I mean, and he could have taken any cormorant on that colony, but he'd get about 10 feet above the head and then go up, just sending a clear. It was incredible. I wouldn't believe it. Is that kind of
Oh, I love ospreys even more. The other thing I've seen an osprey do, osprey was being hassled by a bald eagle, and an osprey did something pretty interesting. It just ditched in the water. It went down and landed in the water with the fish until the eagle flew away and then took off again. So, well, thank you for telling me that. I love that.
Well, when I saw your video about the gull chasing it, I thought, oh my God, that gull doesn't know what he's up against. But I guess the osprey must have let the gull off easy. But yeah, it was incredible. Incredible.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
Joe asks, are there differences in the region they live in, north versus south? Differences in the osprey? Joe, if you want to unmute, if you can clarify that a little, do you mean like differences in their behavior, differences in their food, or just overall general differences?
He's asking me if there a difference?
Yes.
I don't know, because they're migrating south and then coming back here. The ospreys that are living in South America, I'm assuming they just stay there. They don't have to migrate, so I don't know if there's a difference. They're probably healthier and bigger because they aren't doing a lot of flying. I don't know.
I think that's all the questions. But there's a lot of great feedback, and Jim, I'll send you the chat so that you can see everybody's.
Wonderful.